just flip the camera. And there we go. I think a bit more light. I think that's done it. Evening, Dan. Good to have you with me. I actually have another iPhone now that I'm able to use as a monitor, so I can check the video and audio as we go. It's my old iPhone. I just stuck a data SIM in it, basically. So these are the only devices that I've got for live streaming. When I ran the class at Chantry, Dave told me that he was surprised that I hadn't turned up with many devices. Expected all sorts of things, you know, microphones and stands and so on. Evening, Neil. Good to have you with us. Evening, Helen. I'll just give it another minute or so. I think people are used to me starting at 5 past. Okay, may as well get going. Right, so I hope you're all well and that you're counting down the days to the end of the lockdown, which looks like it's going to come round soon. Announcements are for July. A handful of things. One is that the first thing is that tomorrow's meditation class at 11 a.m. in Beckenham Place Park is going ahead. I'll send out an email anyway to the Beckenham Place Park Thursday group so that you've got that information. If you are someone that attends on a Thursday and you don't receive emails, let me know and I'll add you to the list. Then the next thing that's happening is that next week on the 6th, 7th and 8th of July there's no public training. So I have no intention of running the Chantry Studios, the Wednesday evening class and the Thursday morning class at Beckenham Place Park. That's the reason for that is because if you look at my calendar, which you can see on the websites, either of the websites, just go to the website /calendar. What you'll see is that I don't have 2 consecutive days without training. And then when we add the organisational training, Bromley-Well and Mencap and various organisational clients, Darren Valley Hospital and so on, what that means is I very rarely get any time off. So what I'm going to do is on consecutive months I shall either have the 3 sessions during the week or 2 sessions at the weekend off at some point during each month. So if you remember there, I had a weekend off recently. That was for June. In July there'll be 3 days off. But what that means is if you're on the meditation course, you still get access to 15 live streams a month, which I don't think exists anywhere else. So I think that's reasonably good value for money, and I need that because otherwise it's a bit of a hamster wheel. And one of the problems with that is that there's a sense of not actually making any progress. So what I can do is take a block of time and really focus on certain things. One of the things I really need to focus on, by the way, is the migration, finishing the migration of the loving awareness course over to the meditation course, which shall be completed in the next few days, I promise you. Then we've got the Meditation Superpowers course, which starts on, it's going to run on Saturday mornings between 9:30 and 11:30, either at Contingent Works or online on Zoom. And what I'll do is I'll send out a lot more information about that over the course of the next week. And I've got a countdown where I'll update you on the various details related to the course. So if you're interested, let me know. Okay, so I think that's it for announcements, which brings me to post-traumatic growth. There's a part of me that wonders if there's actually any other sort of growth. What the terminology came from a couple of psychologists who psychologists deal with people who experience trauma. All a trauma is, in the broad sense, is something that we need to work on to heal, to recover, psychologically, emotionally. So it can be everything from difficult relationships to money problems to injury, illness, disability, bereavement, and all of the other things that are all part of life. And of course things like sense of rejection and guilt and shame, all of these can be quite sticky. So what actually happens in this post-traumatic growth is what's known as a transformation. I think pretty much that's a Jungian word. Jung was a kind of spiritual father of modern psychology, whereas Freud was more of a folklorish, deterministic, materialistic father of modern psychology. And Jung had this concept of transformation, which has taken hold, and there's a concept of spiritual transformation, and many people begin meditating with that end in sight. Their perspective is that they want to release themselves from their suffering, and this transformation is often associated with the search for nirvana, which is a fundamental part of the Eastern religions. Nirvana meaning freedom from suffering. So this is what the Buddha said. This is what he teaches, is freedom from suffering. And what suffering is how we feel about our experience, our personal emotions that we own, our responses, fears, doubts, guilt, whatever it might happen to be. And what happens in a traumatic situation, more than anything else, as far as I can see, is that it shakes our foundational set of beliefs that are so deeply embedded, which are often the things that actually get in the way of feeling free. It's very common for modern people to have a need, a desire, a want. There's goals, there's expectations, there's aspirations, and it's very easy to live your life based on all of this. There's nothing wrong with having aspirations. There's nothing wrong with having needs and wants and desires. But I believe that the transformation is a recognition of what they actually are, a realization, an understanding of your own personal drives. So it's a learning experience in a lot of ways. So if you imagine you've got this foundation, and it's what you believe about yourself, you believe about others, you believe about your purpose and your meaning, and then something terrible comes along and it might take all of that away, or a lot of it. You know, it might take some people away that you believed you couldn't live without. It might take your career away that you have worked so hard to develop, and so on. Or there's physical illness. So without these, we're then forced to look at the world in a different way. And so the us that we really are rises up out of this, the recognition of the nature of the self as just the witness of our experience, not a list of characteristics, which is how most people kind of see themselves. This is what I call the cult of personality. There's the sense that I am this list, and this is how other people see me. So if you ask people, you know, tell us about Joe, they'll give you this characteristic list, and so we take that upon ourselves as being who we are, and it isn't. So to really realise that that's not the case intuitively, a lot of the time trauma actually does the job. But then, of course, what we need to be able to do when we experience this trauma, clearly there's a lot of distress, and what we need to be able to do is to recover from that distress in a way that leaves us free from the source of the distress, which isn't necessarily the traumatic experience, but all of our expectations and beliefs that are associated with it. So that's from the perspective of meditation, perspective of post-traumatic growth. And of course meditation is seen as a way of growing, and what it is, it's the process within which we learn all of this. We can go out and we can have an experience, but we actually need the time and the space for the answers about that experience to arise, so that we can be aware of them, benefit from them, and grow. So growing, healing and learning all pretty much go together. Right. So let's do growing, healing and learning meditations. If you just want to get yourselves comfortable, we'll begin with the traditional bell. In the process of learning and healing and growing, breath is like a vantage point from which we can be aware of all our internal experience. All of our external experience is reflected in our internal experience. It arises within it. It's reflected in some way. It may be an outside experience, is a course of sadness or distress, and there's some sort of reflection internally. May not be sadness or distress, but it's there. And the way that the breath works is that it's a portal into the present moment. In this instance, that's its purpose. Noticing the movement of the breath through time connects us to our body, helps us to become aware of the emotions that arise within the body. And helps us to become aware of thought. And also helps us to become aware of our state of mind. So we can label that state of mind. Not that it's of any value. For instance, could be sadness, could be joy, could be anxiety, could be happiness. And it's the combination of our drives and desires and wants and needs and actions and responses and thoughts and emotions, all combined in this psychophysiological state. So this is what we can perceive from the breath. The thoughts, the emotions, sensory experience of now, and our state of mind that underlies all of this. Generally, there's nothing to be done, because generally that state is neutral. But when it's uncomfortable or difficult, there's work to do. So we have a set of tools for this. I'll run through them. They're all meditations in their own right and can be done separate from working with difficult emotions. We'll start with the neutral spot meditation. which is traditionally used when there's discomfort from emotions, difficult emotions. It could be physical pain as well, it just could be an unsatisfactory state of mind. It begins by focusing our attention on a neutral spot in the body. A neutral spot being somewhere where we don't normally experience emotion. Elbow, ear, knee, thigh, calf, foot, that kind of thing. Depends on the individual. And the meditation is a meditation of entirely focusing our awareness on that neutral spot. So for this practice I've selected the back of my thigh because I can feel it's in contact with the chair. And I'm immersing myself in the sensations that I'm receiving from noticing the thigh where it's in contact with the chair. Just staying with it, noticing that sensation, staying with my awareness as my awareness progresses through time. So I'm totally focused, totally immersed in the neutral spot. And then after a little while, whenever my mind chooses, I allow myself to sense whatever other state there is. Could be an emotion, could be a state of mind. I'm just letting it in. Now I'm not wallowing in it if it's uncomfortable. I'm just acknowledging it, noticing it. If it's uncomfortable, I just dip in, like dipping our toe into the cold water of the pool before we climb in, or decide not to. And so what I'm doing is staying with that overall sense of how I might feel, or whatever emotions there might happen to be, for a while, until my mind chooses, and when it chooses, I move back and notice the neutral spot. And then whenever my mind chooses, I bring my attention back to my state of mind, back to my emotions. Notice that, acknowledge it, allow myself to feel however it feels. and I'm moving backwards and forwards. Neutral spot, state of mind or difficult emotions. Neutral spot, backwards and forwards, as the mind chooses. And in time, we can replace the neutral spot in this exercise with the breath. So if you practice the neutral spot meditation, once you've fully experienced the neutrality of the breath by being able to sharpen your focus so finely that all that's in it is a sound or a sensation, then it becomes almost invariably a neutral experience. But only when you've developed that skill, then you're able to dip into how you feel and then bring your attention back to the breath. Always acknowledging the thoughts, acknowledging the feelings, not getting caught up into them by labelling them at this stage in this practice. It's not what we do. Can do, but not in this. This is the lightest touch. But notice it's an either-or situation. We don't want to be aware of the breath and have emotion there in the background all the time. In this practice, it's a focus on the breath that's so fine that there's nothing else in it. And then it's an opening out of our awareness to then become aware of emotions or state of mind or physical state. So if you're comfortable with that, then try with the breath. The way to gain the finest focused attention on the breath is to follow the breath all the way down in the out breath and all the way up in the in breath, all the way down in the out breath, all the way up in the in breath. It's up to you, but when we're doing anything that involves any emotion of some sort or another, when we do the breathing meditations, generally speaking, it's the nostrils. So noticing the in-breath, as you begin the in-breath, the focus of your attention is on the nostril, just at the point where the air enters and leaves the nostril. And as you breathe in, you're moving your attention up to the top of the nostrils. And then when you breathe out, the opposite. Starting at the top of the nostrils, up where the eye is. Warm out breath. Noticing it moving down. And when I do this, what I do is focus on alternate nostrils. Breathing in, focused on the left nostril. Breathing out, focused on the right nostril. So this focused awareness of the movement of the cycle of the breath through time is the same experience as noticing the sound of the bell moving through time. Just sound the bell so that you can compare it. and to help you notice the movement of time. And then moving your focus to the point where the air enters and leaves the nostrils. And we're witnessing the cycle of the breath from there. So the more aware we are of this tiny, tiny moment moving through time, the smaller and sharper that moment, the present moment, becomes. And the less invasive thoughts and emotions are. And the more the breath becomes a refuge from them, and a way of focusing away from wherever our mind or our internal narrative, or both, or an external narrative that we've adopted, whatever it might happen to be. The more we're able to focus deeply into the present moment through the focus on the movement of the breath through time, which is actually liberates us from the process in the mind and in the body, and it creates a neutrality from which to experience it. to noticing the sound of the bell moving through time. There's a point where for all meditators, and this is part of the healing process, and this is one of the things that meditation's hugely good at, by focusing on the present moment and by our focus becoming finer and finer and finer and finer, it gets to the point where there's actually nothing there. And that's got a name. It's called the emptiness. And so when your eyes are closed, there really is a sense of being in space, kind of not connected to your body, kind of vaguely aware of the movement of time. And I've always seen that it's an important stage in meditative practice to experience the emptiness. And it's a great healer, because, you know, when you're going through it and those difficult emotions are there all the time, this is a place that you can come. And I remember very specifically, I may even have written it down, you know, thank God for meditation, because there's something I can do, somewhere I can come to free myself from what was basically anxiety. And of course it takes practice and focus to get there, but this is just focus. That's all we're doing, is focusing. Single awareness, we're focusing it, and we're focusing it on a incrementally smaller little sliver of time, which releases us from the suffering that we experience for a period of time. And it gives us an opportunity to recover and regenerate. And also, in the process, we're not hiding from those emotions, because they're there. They're there before we begin it and after, and they're there during it as well. So we're learning to tolerate them in a way, and kind of exposing ourselves to them, but in a way that we can control. And of course we can always stop meditating, and we can always, you know, go and have a glass of wine and watch the TV, make ourselves feel better. So that's always there. But this is a little insight into some very simple basic practices and the way to use them to help us to grow and heal and learn. Okay, so that's it for today. Like I said, so if you're with us tomorrow, Maxine, we will be in the park because it's going to be a sunny day. Hooray! And then back on Saturday, the last ordinary Saturday meditation before the meditation course, which starts on the 10th, and remembering that next week this class won't be running. Right then, I'm so pleased that helped Helen. Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so have a great evening and a great week, and catch up with you all in the fullness of time. Blessings. If you get any questions about this, drop me a line.